speaking the unspeakable. Jews can never trust Gentiles. Any doubts about that were removed by the Nazi Holocaust. So we Zionists had to provide a refuge of last resort for all Jews everywhere. And if creating that state required some Jews, in the name of Zionism, to ethnically cleanse Palestine, to commit a crime against humanity, well, that's the way it had to be. And if the non-Jewish world doesn't understand why we must therefore keep what we have, it can go to hell. Now, I think that's a reasonably fair summary.
Very good
so
summary.
now the big question becomes this: how can that mindset be overcome to bring about a one-state solution?
Well, what you presented is Zionism in its purest form, and indeed there is a strand of thinking that is very much like this. You know, the Israeli journalist and historian, well, he's not a journalist, he's a historian, Benny Morris.
Yeah.
He was interviewed in 2004 in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, and he actually gave answers very similar to that summary that you've just provided, very, very similar, in which he talked about that it might have been wrong to ethnically cleanse the area, or to but it had to be done in the interest of a higher moral good, you know, higher moral good. No, I understand that those sorts of people, it's very difficult to actually dissuade them from this point of view. However, it would be wrong, you know, for us to regard Israelis as a sort of solid wall of the same opinion.
No, they're not. I think we have to talk about the government and the military elite is not necessarily the same as the people.
No, indeed, but not only that, even in governments, even in amongst public figures, cracks have been appearing in this wall in the last 10 years, I say. One is reading and hearing strange things. People are beginning to be aware. There is some sector amongst these opinion formers that is aware that a continuation of the status quo, let's put it not more ambitious than that, is not going to serve Israel's interests in the long run. So there is an awareness that all is not well if you continue to oppress and so on. And there is, let me just say this, there's a large body of Israeli opinion which is actually against the occupation.
Yes, the latest polls are showing that 68% of Israelis loathe their government and anybody who's likely to be in government, much as though we do here in Britain, for example. But also, about the same number of people just want, get the Palestinians out of it, get them out of the way. So in that sense, there is change, but it's a move to what one might call the neo-fascist, let's get on with the ethnic cleansing, right?
Well, possibly, but look, the moment you have doubts appearing about the status quo, then you've got to start. And I recently, let me tell you, as in contradiction, in contrast to Ilan's experience, I had just come back from somewhere where I've been listening to a top Israeli journalist, a man called Gideon Levy.
Oh, terrific.
Who writes for Haaretz. Now, Gideon...
He's the conscience of Israeli journalism.
He is indeed, but he made a very interesting comment. He said, in Israel today, there are two taboos, things you cannot talk about. The first is Holocaust denial, denying anything about the Holocaust or its uniqueness. And the second is the one-state solution. So I said to him, that's the best news I've had for a long time, because that means there's insecurity in the state. For them to, he said there's a move even to outlaw discussion of the one-state solution. Terrific. That means...
Yes, but it means they're troubled by it.
They're troubled, they're afraid. That also can be very helpful, very useful in the evolution of this thinking that I'm talking about. But you know, when I'm talking about the one, it has never been an aim. It's never been one of the aims of trying to promote the one-state idea to say we can persuade the Zionist leadership. Yeah. Certainly not. Of course not. But we do know, as you pointed out so well, that's not all that Israel is. There are people living there, all kinds of people. Some of them actually have begun to see that the way they've been doing things is not good. Some of them actually can relate to Palestinians.
Ghada, I hate cliches. but some of them are expressions of great wisdom. So I'll close by offering you one. United, the Palestinians will stand. Divided, they will fall, and in the conflict zone might be annihilated.
Well, that is prophetic, and that is correct, yes. They would indeed need to be united, but this brings us to what I think is the scenario that I fear and that I think is going to happen. Because so far, Alan, we've been talking about what should happen. What should happen, unfortunately, is different to what will happen. And I think what will happen is that in the conflict zone that you're talking about, there will be more repression by Israel, more land theft by Israel, more support from the Western powers for Israel, more blind indulgence to Israel and fecklessness on the part of the international community, and the result will be increasing violence, explosiveness, chaos, and in the bloodshed that will ensue, a unitary state, a one state, will indeed emerge.
Ghada, I go further than you. I ask the question, what will, I call it gut Zionism, do when it comes to the realization that it cannot break the Palestinian will? The way I put it in summary is that I think it will create the conditions to drive the Palestinians off the West Bank, and into Jordan or wherever. In that event, the West Bank will flow with blood, mostly Palestinian blood, and honest Zionists will call, honest reporters will call it a Zionist Holocaust. That's my fear for the future.
Well, I dare say one of those versions that we've talked, they're both apocalyptic, they're both violent, they're both dreadful to contemplate, but it seems to me there is no escape from the way the whole thing is going. It will end in some kind of cataclysm, explosion, but out of the ashes, I think will emerge the one state, not as I wanted to see it constructed, but nevertheless it will emerge. That is what I believe will happen as opposed to what should happen.
So if I asked you to give me in one sentence a reason for hope, you would be pushed to give it to me.
There is always hope because, thank God, people never stop making plans, looking for a better future, and working towards that better future.
Ghada Karmi and her thoughts on why one secular democratic state for all is the only possible solution to the Palestine problem. Yes, it would mean the end of Israel and Zionism's colonial enterprise. But in the one state, with equal rights for all, those Jews who are now Israelis would have security and peace of a kind they have only dreamed about. That's all for this week. From this heart to yours, good night.